because of its intended purpose, right? And also we can't ignore that part of these concepts work well in the boys because they're derivatives of like Homelander being evil Superman. Part part of what makes that interesting is because we understand Superman. We understand the premise, and we live in a world where we have Superman. So then the concept of a what if Superman was like this is extra interesting because of the context of Superman and other superheroes that the boys is clearly like based on as well. Like even just the seven, the concept of in the boys you got the seven, which is blatantly Justice League, but that's double interesting off the rip because you have the concept of the Justice League being approached in this way that's super political and sexual and has all of the problems that we might have to deal with as people, and then you got the toxicity and all of the so I think that while we can say that The Boys does a lot of things better than Marvel and actual DC, I think it would be better for us to remember that the DNA of The Boys comes from that, and the DNA allows it to spread its wings in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I think at this point you can't avoid inspiration from those two.
Yeah,
And
yeah, you
even if
can't.
you did somehow not get inspiration, you will be compared to. Like you just can't not be compared to those two.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
yeah.
say, but yeah, I agree. I think with DC because I think of Injustice. Injustice is if it's not really. I guess Homelander is bad. Is he bad? I don't know if he is bad.
It's very grey, but I mean, by the time I can't remember how the last season ends, but I mean, he's bad. Okay, he's bad. He's just very. They just do a good job to humanize him in many ways, right? Like his upbringing and his insecurities, right? So he's definitely bad, but he's just so understandable. He's a compelling. There's a phrase for this. He's just well written, I would say, until I think of the better phrase to use.
Yeah, I'm I'm trying to think because I don't think Doom's bad,
Oh,
and I don't
Doctor
know if
Doom.
that's because it's got. Yeah, I don't know if he's justified in his bad actions. I don't know if that makes it not bad. When I look at Homelander and I'm like, is his upbringing justification for his thought process, which leads to him being bad?
Not justification, but you don't have to. The action doesn't need to be justified for it to be considered understandable or compelling, right? Like when he went to the prison, sorry, not the prison. When he went to the old uh, like testing,
Experiment place.
yeah, when he was raised, and they put him in the oven, and then they were testing to see how much temperature he can take before his body actually burns
Mm.
or whatever, right? And then he does to them what they did to him. I think a moment like that is just you basically like if I had the cliff notes of the writer, like whoever wrote that, if I had their cliff notes in terms of if I had their notes which told me what the purpose of the scene was, I would imagine that the notes would say something along the lines of this is us trying to show that anybody, even a superhero like Homelander, can hold on to certain trauma that they experienced as a kid, and this is how they might wield it even when they're many, many years removed from that trauma. Like I imagine that would be the cliff notes. And again, the trauma that scene wouldn't be to absolve him of what he's doing or his actions. It's more so to just put on an extra lens of glasses over your eyes to be like, oh, I see, I get it now, kind of thing.
See, I
Go on.
one of the things this is kind of a segue, kind of, but not.
Yeah,
It's not intended to. But I think one of the things that I can never, as you know, I'm like define this, blah 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 blah. One of the
yeah,
things I can't define is the difference between revenge and justice, because I think justice is just good revenge. So in my head, I don't know what he did to those people were justice, or what they did to him, or revenge, which would be bad and paid.
I would say I'd
I
say
don't
it's
know.
more so revenge. And I guess the question, the follow up will
How
be
do
why,
you
right?
how do you say it's revenge and not justice? That's the bit I can't do. I can't say this is revenge or justice. I don't know
I think
what criteria
justice.
makes it one or the other.
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure. Off the top of my head, I think justice implies the issue with justice is that you baked into the term justice, you already have this concept of bad and good, right? Which we already know is
Yeah.
already contentious. So that's a kind of worms there. And because of that kind of worms, you have to wrestle with the concept of figuring out whose place is it to enact the justice, whose place is it to um to make the call, and then to say that this action is just, and therefore I'm going to be the one to, like, it gets into that whole craziness. Whereas revenge, the reason why I'd want to say more so it's revenge is because okay, I guess to say it's revenge, I need to define why I don't think it's justice. And personally, and I think a lot of people may also agree, which is Homelander seemed to be taking the eye for an eye thing, right? Like, oh, you guys did this to me when I was a kid, so now let me do it to you. Haha, not so funny, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's quite clear to see that him doing that to them, not considering that they are not him, they are not superheroes. They can't stand the temperature of an oven without dying or burning, and so there's already an imbalance there. There's already the imbalance of the amount of time that has passed. There's the imbalance of the power differentiation, not just in terms of superhero versus regular human, but I'm Homelander, I'm the leader, I'm all the way up here in Vought Industries, and you guys are down here. There's so many concepts that makes it unjust, I would argue, to the point where, because it's so unjust because of these things, it has to fall under the category of revenge. And even outside of that, you can even see how he was taking glee, like how he was making he was gamifying their punishment, like he was gamifying their revenge. Like, oh, now you step into the wait. Didn't he ask the guy to masturbate in front of him or something?
Yeah.
And then he lasered off his. Yeah, it's just like so the moment the moment you're gamifying the abuse, clearly it's gonna fall more into the realm of revenge, I would say, especially with the masturbation part. That was rough. Like, and it was a big build up as well. It was like, take off your pants, and he didn't want to do it. And then he's like, oh, I think he commented on the size of his penis or something. So he, dick shaming him on top of destroying his dick with a laser. Dick shamed him before he done it. Made him masturbate. He couldn't masturbate. It made everyone leave the room. It was horrible. So yeah, it's definitely more revenge.
I agree with you, but then I guess I need to one day take myself out of other people's opinions, because a lot of this is clouded by what society would do. Now, if someone was torturing a child, they would say that's fair, what Homelander did. And they're in that position because they were testing crazy stuff on a child. Regardless if the child was basically fucking a powerhouse, right? They still put that child through those tests, not knowing the results. They were testing to see if the results were going to come back to kind of their theories, right? And yeah, like I said, I think society would look at that and go, oh, you would lab rat in a child? Yeah, you deserve all of that. All that dick shaming, lowercase d shaming, oven baking stuff. So that's why I'm like, I get what you're saying. I think if I think of another hero like Batman or Spider-Man, Spider-Man also trolls the villains.
Yeah,
That's
but in a very
making,
jokey way, though.
A mockery out of him.
I
don't think anyone would say that's bad, right? He's
I don't think
vigilantes.
so. Yeah.
Batman, I'm not too sure what most people would say. I think I know he would say it's justice.
Well, but that's part of the magic of Batman, though, right? Like that gray area, the whole. That's why in a lot of Batman stories, that is the question, right? Like part of Batman's coolness is the question around whether what he's doing is justice or revenge and stuff like that. Even the fact that him being he calls himself Batman, entire outfit in black, very menacing, very spooky, in the shadows. Like he's not like Iron Man, like colorful. I'm Spider-Man, yay! Yeah. Like he's like the embodiment of what a lot of people would say is kind of scary, right? So yeah, I think, but that's part of Batman's design as a character, it seems.
Yeah, I think he's not meant to be defined as one or the other.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why he's Batman, and no one. That's why some people make the comparison of Iron Man versus Batman. And it's like Iron Man isn't in that gray area. Iron Man is meant to be, like you said, the shining prestige hero. Exactly. Where Batman is like a hero to some, a villain to others, sort of thing. And obviously making the police force kind of go against him as well,
Yeah, exactly.
automatically makes you think, well, if the police are against him, he must be bad.
Right. Yeah, it makes it. Yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm ever gonna get in my head a definition between the difference between justice and revenge. I think they're so closely intertwined. Even with what you're saying about who should give out the justice, well, who should give out the revenge that would make it justice. I'd be like, oh yeah, sure. So in, I guess, society, if the revenge isn't dished out by the government or a judge, then it's weird because you're using the word to define the word. That would be injustice, right?
Which one? Which one would be injustice?
So, say for example, someone robbed me and I robbed them. That would be an injustice because I've not gone through the proper protocols to get my revenge through the court.
No, but you could still call that. You could. You could still call it revenge, especially if you didn't rob what they robbed back. So let's say they robbed you, and the thing that they robbed is gone now. You can't get it back. So then you robbed them of something else to let them feel what you felt. That you could also call that revenge. Like it doesn't need to go through some kind of legal official system for it to now be called justice. You counter robbing the guy you could say it's justice. Like you could define it as justice, and you wouldn't be. Your feeling would be understandable, or you could say it's revenge, and that would be understandable too. But I don't think that it needs to go through a legal channel for only once it's through a legal channel. Now it's justice, and every other time it's revenge. I think that the individual can call it one or the other, but I do think that there is a tangible difference between why some people might be like, oh, that action that you just described, I don't think that's justice. And then they could say, I think that's actually revenge. But how the individual interprets it, they could use justice or revenge depending on their perspective.
Yeah. So you're saying, well, do you think they can both be right?
I think the individual saying, so in the case of you get robbed and then you counter rob the person. Now, let's say you say, I did it because this is justice. I think the person's feeling, they're correct in their feeling that is justice. But if you're asking me if it's objectively justice, that's where it's tricky, and I think I would have to take it as a case by case. But I know the answer you're probably more interested in is what it objectively is. But I think something like justice, especially in this specific example, it's heavily hinged on the weight of what is on the weight of the person's heart and why they consider the action to be justice, especially if that person is truly doing an even scale action, right? You took my bike, now the bike is gone, so I'm going to take your, I don't know, something different but equivalent, like your skateboard or your scooter, right? Something like that. So I can imagine the person saying, well, I could have smashed his car, I could have burned his house down, but I didn't do that. I want it to be just. I wanted to let him know that this is how it feels. And so they can rationalize it in their brain in a way that I can sympathize with, you know. But as to whether it's factually justice or not, that's where we get into tricky territory.
I think I agree with you. I actually don't know if I would say it's objective or subjective. I think good and bad are subjective 99% of the time, but the way everyone uses revenge and justice is very objectively. That's why I don't know if there is an objective justice and an objective revenge. Because if I think, say, me and you play Among Us and then we hate each other, and then I steal your mic, and then you steal my computer. I'm stealing your mic because I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear what you say. Fuck your streams. Now you can't talk, but you can still do your art. And then you steal my computer because you're like, well, I only stream tournaments. I don't need my mic. So for you to get the revenge of not being able to stream on me, you have to take my whole computer. In that situation, outsiders are going to go, well, a computer is worth way more than a mic. You've
Yeah.
taken more things, but your justification is you're stopping me doing what I stopped you doing. So that's why I'm like, in that situation, outside will say, well, that's not fair. That's when it would be an injustice, right? Maybe not revenge, but it would be an injustice because it's not equal. But I'm like, does equalness need to be involved when you're talking about justice and revenge? I don't think it is. Most of the time, it's revenge has to be, or justice has to be more than the crime. Normally,
Well, some degree of it doesn't have to be equal is the wrong word. I think it just has to be for example, I don't know what the word is. It doesn't have to be equal, just it has to be I don't know if to say
proportion
understandable or proportional, maybe that's the yeah. So I mean so going back to what you said earlier, you said you're not sure if you believe if there's an objective justice, but and that may end up being true. But I think that like we could all agree as a society that if somebody gets arrested for a bunch of crimes, like let's say there's a person running up in the neighborhood and doing house break-ins, like multiple house break-ins. He's done 10 in 1 month, and then the person gets caught, and then they get like whatever jail time. Let's say in that state or that country, it's 10 years, right? Some people might say that, like, if somebody was to say that person getting 10 years is just, or that's justice working. I'm not saying that therefore people agree with it, so it's subjective, but I think that I do think there is something to be said of if we were shown a punishment for an action and let's say 99% of people in the world would be like, yeah, that punishment for that action is fair or just. I think I'm not going to therefore say it, therefore this is objective, but I think that has to account for something. I think if the guy getting 10 years for running up in the neighborhood and robbing people, striking fear into the neighborhoods, people can't sleep at night because they're afraid that they might be next, and then he gets 5 or 10 years, and then everybody in the world says, yeah, good for him, he gets what he deserved. That has to mean something in terms of some kind of visceral human feeling that makes that result of the 5 years feel okay.
Yeah, no, this is the thing. This is why I don't know anything, because I agree with what you're saying, but I can also agree with the counter. That's why I'm like,
what would the counter be in that specific instance?
there could be the backstory could be, oh, I was robbing all these people to feed my kids. I'm a single dad, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And there would be a group of people that would go, you've heard like, oh, it was systemic racism, that's why I had to do it, blah 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 blah. He started off in an unfavorable situation, so he had to do these crimes. You know the drill. That basically, I know you were saying earlier, doesn't kind of absolve you from the crime, but it gives a justification that a lot of people would be like, oh, okay, if that's the case, lessen the what do you call it,
The time?
punishment. There you go.
Yeah.
You lessen the punishment, give him like 3 years, and then 2 years of like community service, or has to go back to school or something like that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the prison systems are more about seeking revenge for the people that were punished over rehabilitating. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I agree with you. If 99% of people are saying, yeah, this is bad, it's probably bad, right? And the people that aren't agreeing maybe have something wrong in their brain. Like, they're just like psychopaths or sociopathy or something. I can't remember that word.
Sociopath.
Yeah, sociopath, that's the one. Yeah, so they don't have like great empathy. And I guess for someone to judge if an action is not even justice or revenge, but good or bad, you need that empathy, right? You have to be able to go, well, I would assume you would have to be able to go, oh, I wouldn't like that happening to me, so it must be bad.
Yeah.
Think you would need that for that situation? I think maybe a robot could do it as well.
But I think even with the case where if you insert, oh, the guy that was doing the home robberies had all of these reasons, right? Even in that case, if the reasons came about in the court and then they said, okay, it's because of these reasons, instead of giving you 10 years, we're going to give you 5. and then and with a chance for early release on good behavior, whatever. I think if it turned out that a lot of people were also to say we think that's just or that's reasonable, I guess it will get more complex if what would be more interesting or to explore would be, let's say what you said is the case and he's trying to feed his family, and let's just say there's 3 other reasons as well, 3 other reasonable reasons, like feeding the family. He owed somebody money that his dad got into some trouble with some people, and his dad's dead now. And now the people that his dad owed money to are coming after him. So now he needs to find, like, let's say there's a bunch of reasons that are really shit circumstances to be in, and that made him resort to these situations, right? Now, let's say he goes to court, and under normal circumstances, he should have got 10 years. But let's say the judge is like, you know what? I know your backstory, blah, 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 blah. We're going to give you 5. Now, if the people in the neighborhood are like, if they're split, if some of them are like, oh, he should get the 10, and the other half is like, you know what? I was affected by his behavior as well, but after hearing his backstory, I think the 5 is fine. And then let's say it's a 50-50 split. That's where I think it gets really tricky. And how do we determine which one is justice or not? Personally, I think this may be one of those things where, like, this is part of the reason why we have the court system, right? It's supposed to allow you to lay out all of these facts, to have a jury of uncompromised people, jury of your peers or whatever, to make a call. And I would definitely vote squarely on the call of, oh, these are his circumstances that he couldn't control for, and he decided he didn't have as many opportunities, and then he did, give him the 5 years. Like, come on, let's be, let's try to be fair, So, and again, that doesn't make it objective, but I think a lot of people wouldn't take umbrance or issue with the 5 years, and yeah, no, a lot of people would. A lot of people would. But I think I would wager that more people, and especially if it's this example, right? If it's the example of 10 years down to 5. Now, if it was 10 years down to 3 months or 10 years down to 1 year, then I think you would have a situation where it's like, this accounting of his backstory is imbalanced or unjust, right? So I think it comes down to, like, how are we lightening the sentence based on the circumstance? And I think 10 to 5 is fair. And therefore I would say it's just. But again, it comes down to, like, one individual might say that's just, and another individual might say, oh, but I still can't sleep at night. I still get PTSD from whenever the postman comes and knocks on the door. I think it's the guy with the strap. You know what I mean? So, oh, hey, what's up, Green Gorgino? I used to do animation, but I don't really animate anymore. I can still animate, but I'm very, very, very out of practice. So right now I just mostly just illustrate here and there. Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Because me, even if I wasn't one of the people in the street, Dark Alley Street, I didn't live there, so I never got robbed.
Yeah,
I would still look at the situation and be like, this is probably my political ideology, but I would be like, don't lessen it, because you're giving other criminals, or even real criminals that are just robbing you because they want to rob you and make money, or some like kingpin shit.
Yeah,
you're giving them a loophole to not take their correct punishment by giving a sobby backstory, right? I'll be like, no, if you do this crime, straight up, if it's like 2 years for every house you robbed from.
Yeah.
Regardless of your backstory, you take those 2 years, because even knowing your history, you as a person need to be able to be like, it's not worth it. I think that's what most law works on. It's a risk rewarder thing. We go back to risk reward. Is the risk of you doing this to feed your family worth it? Because the risk is that you not only get to not feed your family, you put them in debt, or you make their life harder because you're not going to be around now. It's a shit situation, don't get me wrong, and I feel empathy, but if you don't, I guess in the hypothetical world, there would have to be help that he would have to turn down for me to have my mindset. So say there were programs, you know, like, I mean, we still got like job seekers and blah, 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 like welfare to help people with families that don't have jobs to survive and whatnot. When you have things like that, I think it changes my mind on the punishment. If you don't have things like that, then I'm more on board with what you're saying. Like, there is basically like, there's no other option. But I think in most societies, or Western societies, you have things that can help before you have to turn to crime.
I agree, but I think that one thing you might not be considering is like when you earlier you said the person making the call should have the understanding about the risk, right? But then you do have a lot of situations where for people like us, it's going to come like this risk thing or of fully understanding the consequences or what could happen. Number one, it doesn't fall evenly to everybody. Not everybody is going to be, even though it seems like they should, like, come on, guy, you should know what's going to happen if you get caught, right? But one, that alarm bell doesn't go off in the mind of everybody. And two, perhaps more importantly, like, this is so important that it probably deletes the first thing I said, which is that the reality is that a lot of these decisions are made with the risks understood, but the situation is so dire that that the risk is, like, especially if you don't plan to get caught. Like, if you come up with a plan and you really don't expect to get caught, and you not getting caught could actually alleviate you of whatever really dire situation one may be in, then considering, like, if the judge was to say, and if the judge was to give a slightly harsher sentence because, you should have known, in some cases, that may be part of the reason why the judge might pass a harsher sentence. But in this example, I don't think that if the judge was to do that, I don't think that would be fair or just. Especially if the example was hungry, trying to feed his family, relative died that owes the cartel money, but now he's coming after the oldest boy of the family, which is him, and then like let's say this is that, right? If the judge was to be like, you should have known, it's like, well, I did know. So you're giving me a harsher. What do you mean? That's fucked up.
Wait.
So I think.
Wait, does that not make sense? I think.
No, it makes sense. It shouldn't be him saying you should have known only works if. Wait, let me think. Saying you should have known, like when you say you should have known, it's like the problem is, but he did know. So, like, why are you saying you should have known?
I think he's saying, if I'm the judge and I say you should have known, I think I'm saying you know the risk to what you're doing, but you're not saying you would have got caught. So I kind of agree with you. I
like, he knows the risk. The person knows the risk. They must know the risk. But the reason why we're here is not because I didn't know the risk. It's because of
the probability. Not the risk.
It's the situation. It's the fact that I got caught. That's why we're here. But you throwing the book at me more because you're saying I should have known the risks seems weird when I did know the risks, you know?
Okay, like, sorry, yeah. I agree with you. That's, okay. Let me take back what I said.
Yeah.
I think I've literally just made a revelation. So,
okay.
when the judge says you should have known, and I said, I think what they're relaying is you should have known the risk. That's what I thought until now. Maybe what the judge meant was you should have known the maths. The probability of you getting away with this was extremely low. I think that changes it.
That's even worse.
Knowing the risk.
I think that take is even worse.
Is it?
Yeah, because
I think it justifies it.
Because the reason why it shouldn't matter is because the reason why that's even worse is because the person in that scenario is not going to be in the frame of mind to be able to be able to rationally consider the risks or consider the probability. The probability, right? Yeah, because you have to take into the account of the mind of the person doing the crime. If the mind of the person doing the crime is completely compromised because of these prior situations that drove them to do the crime, it wouldn't be fair to now that would be unjust to now say, I'm giving you these extra 2.5 years because you should have known the maths. And the criminal's like, but but this is like my brain was so compromised based on the situation. How can you punish me more for not being in the right, for not even being possible? It's not that I was able to and I didn't. It's that my brain was incapable given the scenario that I was in. Unless you want to argue to me, the judge would have to argue, or the prosecutor would have to argue, listen, not only did you do the crime, but you were capable of thinking differently. You were capable of measuring out the probability. That's what the prosecutor's job should be, right? But
I think that's easy.
Well, that's what some people try to do. But that's why the defense might be like, actually, no, you're telling me that this person who went through this, who went through that, these are the circumstances. You're telling me this person is going to be thinking of the probability the same way that a person may think of probability if they're not in that situation. That would be unreasonable. So that's where the debate would happen.
I'm trying to think. Have you had those moments where you're like, is this my own fault or am I just parroting someone else? I'm trying to make
I know. I mean, whether it's a parrot or if it's you, I guess we'll find out. We'll find out eventually.
So I think at the point where you say you should have known the maths, for that person to come over a crime that they thought was going to work, they're intelligent enough to do the maths. That's like, for me, that's like saying to someone, oh, you're saying you're hungry, and you're saying, oh, I couldn't have made myself a sandwich. I didn't know where all the bread and the butter was. But I see you doing a Rubik's Cube in less than 13 seconds. I'm like, no, you're smart enough. You just didn't want to do the maths. You saw the sum. You had the calculator in your hand, but you just didn't want to punch in the numbers. Because I think a criminal knows to be a criminal. I think step one, to be part of criminal club, you don't just talk about it. You also have to go, most of the time, this ain't working out for me. And if you are smart enough to come up with a crime that you don't get caught for, your maths are on point. They have to be by default.
Well,
So
okay. I think in most cases I agree with you, right? Because most criminals who are doing petty crimes like this, they do have other options, like you mentioned before. There probably is some welfare program. There probably are jobs around. The issue is probably that they don't have the education, or they just don't have the drive, the hardworking drive to get rejected until you get a job, right? So in 80% of cases, I would agree with you, that is the case. But I think because we're trying to explore justice and revenge and that stuff, right? I think it's better to explore it by these trickier examples, like the example we're talking about. And the reason why I think that in the example we're talking about, or examples like this, it's important to see the difference, because again, going back to the probability thing, what happens in the case where a judge is saying, this is your punishment because you should have known, but literally based on the brain chemistry and the way the neurons are firing in the person's brain during the time of the crime or leading up to the crime, it rendered them incapable of even reviewing the possibilities. It now seems unfair or unjust to now punish them based on something that they were incapable of doing at the time. That's crazy. Like that oftentimes would be spoken against if that was to happen in court. And there's many other crimes where, not even just crimes or court, right? Like, remember a while ago I made an example of like if a kid got made fun of, like let's say a kid's family like died in a car crash like a week before, and then they came to school, and then somebody made fun of like aggressively made fun of the kid's family dying, and then that kid like fucking drop kicked the person that made the joke, right? It would be inhumane to turn to the kid that did the drop kick and be like, well, you should have known that if you drop kick somebody, they're gonna get hurt. It's like, well, it's not that the kid doesn't know, because in any other circumstance, the kid would make a more rational judgment call. But the reality is, when the insult was made, and mixing that with the fact that they just lost a family, you're asking them to think. You're asking them to think in a way that in that moment they would be incapable of thinking in that way, because the rage of what the other kid just said has just. You know what I mean? So that's why it would be unfair.
By the impulse.
Yeah.
Like you're saying it's not fair to make someone logically talk themselves out of an impulse reaction to something.
Yeah, whether you say impulse or whether you just say like based on the scenario, because it doesn't have to be impulse, because that could also suggest that it was like it happened immediately, like it happened within 10 seconds, so there was no time to think. But I think that it's not just about it's not just about how little time there was to react. It's also the circumstance could bring about a mindset where the mindset is incapable of doing the thing that you say they should be able to do if they were in any other circumstance, such as thinking rationally. Like if you're in a mindset where you are temporarily for the next 5 minutes you are not going to be thinking rationally, to now judge them based on that rational standard is completely unfair or unjust, I would say.
But I think as a society, don't we request that from everyone? Like, I know what you're saying. It's yeah, I do know what you're saying. I think it is. I think it's unreasonable for that kid, for the teacher to say to that kid, "Oh, you should have known the expectations of drop kicking this kid. Like, you know what's going to happen because we put it in the code of conduct that you can't drop kick your fellow pupils
Yeah.
for no reason." If that's in the book, the kid's not going to go, I want to lick off this drop kick from the top rope, but my code of conduct says I shouldn't.
Yeah.
I get that bit. I 100% get that bit. I think what would go through the kid's head is, fuck the rules. Like, I do not care. This guy. So to me, because you've done like deductive reasoning, you've either said I don't care about the rules, or you might have said the ends justify the means. Like, this kid has to get it because otherwise, I don't know how long this is going to go on for. I might get bullied for the rest of my like school time, right? If I don't stand up for myself. And regardless of either one of those options, shows that you can think. It might be more of a bias thing. I think that's where it is, right? You're more biased for doing the thing that you want to do than going, oh well, if I do this, the punishment is bad or unfair because of I was kind of pushed into the situation because this kid was pushing me to do this. I would say if they both got the same punishment, it would be more fair. Kid that say they both got expelled for 2 months or something, I think that's fair. I don't think that would be injustice to the kid that did the drop kick. I don't know if everyone would agree with that.
You said if the kid if they both got the same punishment.
Yeah. The kid who said it and the kid who did the drop kick. I think that would be Well, that would be. I don't think justice always has to be one outcome or another. Like, this outcome is just and this other outcome is unjust. I agree. I think that if they both get suspended or whatever, that's just. But I also think that if the kid who did the drop kick, like, okay, let's say the outcome is the scenario happens, but the kid that did the drop kick, let's say he gets suspended for a week, and the kid that did the insult gets suspended for 3 weeks. I think that's just too, because I think that the school is clearly considering the craziness of the fact that the kid made fun of his dead parents. They're also considering the hyper extreme sad situation that the family of the dead children. Oh my God, they're considering the drop kicking kid who's just lost his family. They're considering his mindset and his needs, especially now that he's lost his family. He needs to be in school like doubly now that the situation's happened. So I think that in that case it would be just too for the kid that did the drop kick to get less of a punishment. Maybe really? If he gets if he gets no punishment, I think that would be too much. I think that there would be enough to say, okay, listen, we can see that the other child is crazy for making that joke, and that's super unfortunate. It's so recent. The kid lost the family a week ago, and you're making these kinds of jokes. Okay, I think everyone will be like, we get what's going on, but to not punish the drop kicking kid at all, right? In some kind of way, I think most people will be like, okay, now you're that's way too much, because now it makes it seem like you can just do any kind of retaliation and it's fine. Right, so there has to be some punishment to the drop kicking kid. But in the case where the drop kicking kid gets less punishment than the insulting kid, I could see a world where that people can say that would consider that to be just too, or to be fair. Maybe. So I agree with you, but I think I can think of a.
Oh,
I
I'm
can think
talking
of the
with
other side.
a guy named C4. Sorry, someone in the chat is asking, Shannon Kosa, who is the guy? I'm just talking with a friend of mine, C4. He's sometimes often in the chat, so we're just chatting about random topics. Sorry if it's boring. Sorry, go on.
I was meant to only speak about speedrunning, but
No, it's all good.
Yeah, I was thinking if this happened to my little girl and she was the drop kicky or the drop kicker, I would agree with you. The person who said the thing, the person who basically triggered the drop kicking session, it's their fault. They should know better.
Yeah.
But I feel a like golden rule that not even schools have, everyone has, is words can't hurt you, but drop kicks can. So that person could have been severely injured from the drop kick, but the words couldn't physically hurt. So it seems counterintuitive to that rule to punish the person who did the quote unquote lesser crime, which is saying words, than the person who did a physical action with someone. And if someone made the argument, I would be, you know what, that does make sense. That's not my argument, but I could see that holds as much weight because it is a rule. Like, words don't hurt you. Mentally, obviously they can, but you can get over that most of the time.
But, well, see, you have to have the caveat of most of the time, right? Because even there are some states in America that even have things, fighting words, right? Where there's an understanding that in certain parts of the world, or certain, at least in America, there's certain words or scenarios where it should be an expectation where, sure, words can't hurt you, but some words or some instances can be so hurtful that you need to expect that there's probably going to be an escalation based on what has been said. So I think that there's not, and even outside of the fighting words thing, there's also again it goes back to, sure, the word doesn't physically pierce your chest like a knife does, but if the words are so powerful to the point where they can eject all reason and logic out of a person's brain to make them respond with that kind of impulse, then that has to be accounted for. Like it has to be taken into consideration when it comes to how are we now going to punish these people that are involved. And again, like I agree that
No, I agree with you. I think it should be punished, but that's what I'm saying. I don't think it should be less. I don't think it should be more than drop kick, because the drop kick can put you in a wheelchair. The words can't. So I don't know if it's a case of calculating the potential damage from the drop kick versus the words.
Right.
Or it's a case of people just use it as a rule, because if we didn't have the rule of like words don't react on words to a physical reaction, society would be fucking in shambles, especially with Twitter. So yeah, I agree with you that words are. That's why obviously I hesitated when I was like, most of the time it doesn't cause long-lasting damage, because obviously you can get traumatized by just words 100%, and that lives with you forever. But the potential damage, I would say, is greater with a drop kick. And
for sure,
so I'm thinking, is it fair to punish the physical action less than the verbal action when we all kind of agree that verbal assault is a lesser crime than physical assault?
Okay, the reason why I think that in examples like this, the reason why I would side for decisions the reason why I may decide with a decision that favors the drop kicking kid more is because I think it goes back to the psyche. I guess it depends on how old the children are, but let's say that they're at least 16 or 18, right? And that they are at an age where a child. Okay, here's the way I see it is, if the child who made the insult gets punished more, I think that punishment is coming by way more so of the mind, the type of mind that decides to make the joke, and not the joke itself.
Wow.
The joke is not necessarily the issue. It's the fact that you knowing that the guy's parents died a week before, what kind of mind decides to make a joke about that? That's why you're getting the book thrown at you, not the joke itself. And I think that's why I would be able to be like, you know what? the drop kicking kid, even though we're talking about physical response versus words, of course they're different, and you could argue that what if he got drop kicked and then he hit his head on the curb, his head exploded, and now he's dead, right? Like that's gonna be something to consider as well. But the reason why I may side with that decision is because it's more about the depraved mind that would make the joke rather than the joke itself.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you again. I think there is a danger in that because that's how you create jokers. That's like how you create crazy people, right? If I'm the person who said the words and I'm getting punished when I've been told, oh yeah, words. Say that person's like a scrawny like nerd and he can't fight. So all he has are these words, and he comes up with like a little quip. All the other kids laugh when he says this, then he gets drop kicked, right? He's in that person's mind. Obviously, it's a little bit. I think you could attribute ignorance as well as like depravity in his head. Like he could be thinking, oh, I've heard comedians make crazy jokes about like the Holocaust and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, the internet and whatnot. So to him, he's like, oh, well, you know, joking about someone's death isn't that bad. Obviously, again, that's kind of like terrible social awareness, but I guess people give kids that kind of bypass because they're kids, right?
Yeah.
So, but I'm not trying to take away from like, there's something, the wiring in your brain isn't finished yet. And to correct that wiring, we're going to punish you for doing something that's bad. That you shouldn't do in society. I 100% agree. But that's also motivation to be like, fucking society's just out to get me. I did the lesser crime.
Oh, I see.
Which was told to me by them, and now I'm getting more punished. Now I'm just going to be even more of an asshole because the rules aren't fair. The rules aren't the rules.
That could happen, but I think it just depends on the punishment. Again, like the punishment, if the kid who made the joke gets what's the one where expelled is when you can't come back, right? Or is this
is it expulsion? I think they might be the same thing.
Which one? Because they're suspended, and I think suspended you can come back in after the time. I think.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Okay,
yeah, you're right.
So let's say the insulter gets expelled, and let's say to make matters even more interesting, expelliarmus, right? Let's say, and to make it even more interesting, let's say that the insult was the kid's first offense, like it's the first time he's ever done anything bad, right? And then he gets expelled. Then I would say again, I think maybe that's unjust, maybe because. Not just because of their action, not just because of the punishment, but because of what you're saying, like maybe the kid who got physically hit, him getting expelled for good, and then the kid who did the physical hitting can come back after a week or two. That doesn't foster a healthy society or a mindset for that child going forward, because a lot of the time schools make these decisions not just based on schools should be making some of these decisions based on how it may set up the kid in the future, especially when they're still quite young and they have a lot of potential, and being in a school, like schools has to be very careful when they decide to fully expel somebody, because when you do that, it's on their record. New schools are not going to be as open to picking that child up. You give the child. Yep. The school may very well set that child on a very bad path, right? Even though you could argue, well, the child shouldn't have done whatever. True, but as a school who's led by responsible adults and who know the ins and outs of psychology and what roads they may lead down and all that shit, they have to be extra careful how they wield that decision, right? So yeah, if in a world where the kid who did the insult got permanently expelled, I would say that's not just. But going back to what you're saying, like I'm saying, as long as the punishment of the insulter is fair, if it's more punishment than, like, it's possible for the punishment to be higher than the drop kicking kid, but it can still be fair, such as insulter gets 3 weeks, drop kicking kid gets 1 week, something like that.
Yes.
I think it would be okay.
I don't know if you would agree. No, actually, I think you wouldn't agree with this. Do you think if things just had a straight up, this is the punishment, I don't care about the reasoning or your history, you could have an objective revenge/justice distinction? So if it's a case of, if you hit someone, regardless of well, say you hit someone and it damages them. So, like, obviously, I don't know, you punch someone, they get a nosebleed, you kick them in the leg and they have to hobble around for however long, right? If you injure someone, there's a flat out, you can't turn up to work or go to school for 2 weeks. Just like a flat rule like that. No matter what they did to provoke it, as long as it wasn't an accident, obviously. No matter what they said to provoke it, if you had a bad day, whatever. Do you think that would help with the distinction between the two? Because if you had like a flat punishment for a crime, then you could distinguish whether it's fair or not instantly, and everyone knows the rule.
Wait, can you describe that again? I didn't fully absorb everything.
My bad, yeah, I was yapping.
Okay.
So if you have like a no hitting other students, we'll stick with the school thing. No hitting students, so that's drop kicking, punching, hitting with a baseball bat. There's a flat rule: you're you're suspended for 3 weeks. It doesn't matter about what they did to provoke it, like the person who got hit. Doesn't matter what they did for that. It doesn't matter with your like family or home situation. You're going through a rough time. It's just a flat 3 week suspension. Do you think that would help distinguish justice and revenge?
Do I think it would help distinguish justice and revenge?
Yeah, because that way you all have a understanding of what the punishment should be from the get go before you've even committed the crime. So we wouldn't have to take into basically we erase nuance in crime.
Or erase. I'm not sure how it relates. I follow what you're asking, but I'm not sure how the lead up to the question relates to justice and revenge. Like, I'm not sure how a flat rule for any physical harm is a suspension. I'm not sure how that leads to, like, what would the question have to do with the premise? If you get what I'm saying.
If we go back to the person who robs a house, who robbed the street, the neighborhood, right? If you said, okay, you robbed these 10 houses, the rule is in this country, in Latvia or whatever, Doom is the judge, jury, and executioner. You get 1 year in prison for every house you've robbed.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter what you rob. You could have robbed a penny from the first house and a 5K flat screen TV from the second house. You're getting a year for both of those houses because that's the rule. You get a year for robbing a house. And if the person said, oh, I had to rob this flat screen TV because my son loves Cocomelon and he needs it in 5K, whatever, to make him happy.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter about Doom's going to say, I don't care about your backstory. I don't care why you did it. You could have a very good reason to rob the apple you did from the third house to feed your kid. You're getting a year for that. With that in mind,
I see.
In my head, that would make justice and revenge like flat for everyone. All the people that got their houses robbed, whether it was the apple and the penny versus the flat screen guy, they can go, well, he got a year for robbing me. That's fair.
Yeah, but okay, yeah, I agree that in that kind of society, and there's countries like that they that's just how they do it, and they do it partially because they don't want there to be wiggle room. They want it to be either A.
I didn't know that.
Well, there's countries where it's like they don't have as flexible of a legal system. It's more so like you steal, you get caught stealing. This is the punishment. Like that's it. Like there's places like that, right? So, and I think part of the reason why they do that is because they don't want, because one, it's just easier, and two, it serves as a better deterrent because people know that no matter what your circumstance is, this is the punishment you're getting, right? So in those places, I would agree that clearly they're doing that because that form of justice is just better for them, or it works for them, or it's easier to execute. But I think what makes things more interesting is maybe, I think personally what makes it more interesting is what then happens. So in a country where if you do this action, this is the punishment you get, doesn't matter what your circumstances is, what then happens, or what I like to then explore is, but what if there is a scenario where the lead up to the action or the cause of the action is super duper heavily encouraged or influenced by a very either a tragic situation or traumatic situation, a desperate situation, or all three put together. What then happens in that case? And then if the answer to that is tough luck, here's the punishment. I can then see another world where it's like, well, now we can argue if that is just because you've heard all of the backstory behind the crime, and it's like you're listening to the story while eating popcorn, and you're like, oh, you're done? Okay, 5 years. Like you know what I mean? Like, no, it doesn't matter. I don't care what you have to say. That I think there's a world where we can discuss whether that's just as well, because there would be a level of unjustness to listen to somebody's scenario and for it to not be taken into any kind of consideration at all. Especially if the scenario is like, if we're getting into the realm of scenarios which change your brain, change the rationale of your brain at that moment, or change the ability to be able to think with probability or rationally, right? Like if you're hearing situations that compromise that, and even with the understanding of the compromise, you're like, nah, 5 years. I don't think that's a perfectly good just world either.
I have to think about it. I just don't. My initial answer would be, you can't unfairly enforce a rule if the person already knew about the rule. I'm trying to think if I could say that.
It's just going to be a case by case thing though, because generally I agree, but like there's reasons why. But the problem is that a lot of cases are not the same, right? Like
I get that, but that's why there's the flat rule. So if someone said, "Oh, yeah, you was in dire straits and you had to steal this £10 from this house to pay rent," I'll be like, "But you know the rule of stealing, it's 5 years." Like, I don't know if I could say the person saying it's 5 years, regardless of your backstory, if that's injustice.
Okay, think of something like
emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get the emotional bit, but I'm like, I can't say it's unfair that he's enforcing the rule that we've all agreed on because I live in a society, sort of thing.
Okay, let's say let me bring it closer to something that's more current or relatable, right? Let's say let's say you got a rapper, right, or an up and coming rapper who is in a state where in that state you can't carry a gun, right? You just can't. If you carry a gun, you get like 3 years for every bullet found in magazine or whatever, right? And then, but let's say this rapper, let's say it's not even that far from shit that's really happened. Let's say it was Quando Rondo, who, if you follow the Little Dirk situation, you know that like they still want revenge for the King Von situation, and basically he has to live thinking or feeling that somebody could be coming to get him at any time. So let's say you have a rapper who's in a state where they can't carry a gun, but this rapper decides to carry a gun because not because he has this unrealistic feeling that somebody's out to get him, but you've got people around him have died, both family and friends, died in shootings that were out to get him. There's songs making songs about how they're going to get him next. You know, there's shootings almost every weekend in that area. If this person is now to carry a gun because they actually believe that me not carrying a gun could be the difference between me losing my life or not, right? So then now the police pulls him over. Oh, you got a gun. 5 years. I don't care about your backstory. I don't care about the truth that people want to kill you. We don't care about the truth that people around you have died related to people trying to kill you, right? To me, it would then seem almost like inhumane and unjust to punish him with no consideration for that. Like, it doesn't mean to say, oh, we considered the facts, so we're going to let you go free. No, that's too much, right? There has to be some kind of punishment or enforcement of the laws. But I would just say that if there is a law that can agree that this is what's happening with this individual, he's living his life in fear, the chances of him getting killed while driving a car in a drive-by is quite high, but we're going to give him the same 5 years that any other person will get, even though the other people might not have the same threat attacking them every day. I think a lot of people will be like, that's something needs to change there. Maybe the words we will use, it might not be it's unjust or it's unfair. But I think you can analyze that system and be like, perhaps this system is not fair because given the circumstances.
I have to change the hypothetical slightly to get an answer because I would say, well, if it's a rapper, well, I'm guessing a successful rapper.
Like, let's say it's up and coming.
Up and coming.
Yeah. Or it doesn't even have to be a rapper. It could just be a person who lives in the hood. Maybe they're not that wealthy, but they live in an area. Like you could have the same example, but they're not a rapper. Because I know with the rapper, you could say like, oh well, he's got money enough to be in another area, or whatever, right? Which was true.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
But let's say it's not a rapper. Let's just say it's somebody who's in the area. They can't really just up and leave.
If they've not got the money to move and they didn't do anything to get put into that bad situation, because I'm thinking, well, if people had to kill you, you must have done something real bad.
Yeah.
To have like a gang after you. But say they didn't do anything, it was like they got misidentified or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And them explaining it ain't working. I guess because I see the rule as like not an agent, I can't say enforcing the non-agent is unfair.
Wait, say again? You said because you see the what?
Because I see the rule as like a non-agent. It's not biased. It's like the rule is a rock. It's just a rock. You can't say the rock is bad or good or unfair or anything.
True.
So someone enforcing that, I wouldn't say that the person saying the rule is being unjust. They're just following the law.
But why do we have like if that's the case, we don't need to just put a robot instead of the judge, right? The whole point of a judge and a jury is to be able to analyze, to look at the law, look at the scenario, and try to come up with a punishment or a solution that is applying the law in a fair, reasonable way. At least in parts of the world where we have this kind of legal system. There's going to be parts of the world where this kind of legal system is not how it works. It's just the law is the law, right? But at least in the Western world, like we have judges. Like literally, it's in the name, judge. Like you have the name of his title is to make a judgment call based on the scenario, based on the law, and based on the circumstances. So if we're just going to flat out be like, listen, like you have, we in this jury. We heard your story. We can fully understand why you need that gun or why you felt like you needed that gun. But 5 years. That's just you might just don't have the judge at that point. Just have an automated AI system where it just input circumstances, output punishment. That's it.
I think this could be because I've been playing too much Death Note, but I think that would be fairer.
Fairer?
Just have like, those cash out machines. Just literally have one of those.
Yeah.
You input the crime you made and you get a receipt. Yep, that's how much you're having. Like literally like Death Note. It's like in Death Note they don't tell you the crime. They just say that's a criminal. Right. Kill the criminal. That's what you do as Kira.
Right.
And again, I could be biased, where I'm like that is more fair because you're not acting upon. So with the judges. Obviously, you can't avoid this, and there is no problem to the solution. But some judges are just going to be softer or harder. That's just it, right? So some judges are going to hear the story and go, you know what, I can relate. So I'm going to give you a lesser sentence, and a harder judge won't do that. To me, that is the unfair part. The unfair part is that someone's life or how much life they will have left after coming out of prison is determined on if the judge woke up on the right side of the bed.
True, yeah. I acknowledge that in cases where, like, let's say you have identical situation. Let's say in the state of New York, situation happens with a gun or whatever, and let's say a mirror state, like the same state with the same laws with gun carrying as New York, let's say New Jersey, right? And let's say like same scenario, but the New York judge decides he wakes up in a more positive mood, and then he's less harsher, and then the New Jersey judge is more harsher. I think that feels unfair, especially if the two criminals or the two people who got caught find out about each other's cases. One of them is going to be like, well, what the fuck? This is some bullshit. We got the same as that. He went to jail or I went to jail and he didn't, right? That sucks. However, what was I going to say? The oh no, there's something on my mind before I was going to say that. However, wait, what did you say before?
I was saying the machines doing it would be more fairer, because when you add humans, that's when you add the unfairness. Taking away the human judgment part is how you make it fair.
Yeah, I remember now. So what I was going to say is that I think one thing that complicates this further as well is that the thing is, even though it can be unfair if two judges decide oppositely on the same situation in different places, what I think needs to be analyzed more or considered more is that the reason why we don't leave these decisions to machines is because as humans, we should be able to sometimes, at least, maybe not all the time, but we should be able to sometimes think about certain concepts, such as whether it's forgiveness, whether it's redemption, whether it's like giving somebody a second chance, right? A machine is not really going to be, unless you program the machine to determine or to have a probability to give a second chance. But that's like fucking gacha game, right? Like the probability that you get a second chance receipt versus getting 5 years receipt. That I don't know how that would work. But at least with a human, the reason why, again, you have to think about the fact that we have a court system and we have people, juries who come there weeks at a time to listen to the case, look at all the facts, and then make a decision. And they're not only making a decision. That's why, in at least in America, and I think this happens in a lot of the Western world, how you dress when you go to court as a suspect is very important, because that's why a lot of people, they'll go there dressed in a suit, they'll go there with a haircut looking nice, their body language, they're going to be mindful of, they're going to be talking a certain way, because at the end of the day, this stuff matters, right? And whether we like it or not, like the chance of somebody, one person in the jury saying, nah, he did it. That could be, the difference could be based on how you dressed that day, how you spoke that day, or just the vibe that they got from you, right? And so I think that like it works both ways. Like the same way that somebody's opinion or somebody's interpretation of the individual like can make them go to jail, it could also save them as well, which I guess you can say is unfair. But I think as long as these decisions are being made by humans who are going to be susceptible to different inputs and like, oh, he seems like he really wants to change, or he seems like he's really scared for his life, so he had to put the gun in his car. Like he's not planning to go out on the street and use it. He's just been surrounded by death from the age of 7, and this is the life that he's in, And I think it would be unfair to live in a world where, as humans, we can't consider these things when judging how we punish people. That would seem like a more unjust world to me, which is interesting because you're the polar opposite.
Yeah, no, I guess it's a case of, I think yours is unfair too. I think the robot one is less unfair. I don't think there is a perfect solution until we can like mind read and know and have perfect knowledge. Yeah, I think there's no way to have a perfect system. I just think the robot one is closer to that goal.
I see. But
overall, actually, no. I think overall, because like you said, there are going to be, say for example, we have like 90 good judges and 10 bad ones. 10% bad judges and 90% good judges.
Yeah.
There's going to be obviously a 10% rate of unfair judgments. Where the robot one, it's not unfair because they're enforcing a non-agent rule, but it's gonna affect people unfairly. The example you came up with is judged unfairly because there is no nuance, but it's not unfair to give the flat rule where the human judges are gonna judge accordingly, but some are going to be biased or unfair in terms of like their perception of things outside of the crime, like you said, with how they dress and how someone presents himself and stuff. If they've got money to get an attorney or whatnot, that makes me think there's a lot of people that get put in for more time because they can't afford a lawyer.
True.
And that shouldn't come into the equation when you're talking about a crime or not. How much money you have prior to the crime shouldn't make a difference.
Yeah.
But it does. It's part of the system. Yeah. So I think it's less unfair, but it's still unfair to do the checkout systems.
That's I think less unfair is also, yeah, that's true as well. It's not like my position is like completely fair, because there's going to be cases where my world can be abused or feel unfair to people too. You know, not to mention like the victim, because another thing we need to consider as well is the victims of, like, if there was a crime that involved a victim, is the victims of the situation and how they may receive, like, let's say the judge is forgiving and it's like, listen, I'm not going to throw the book at this person because of these circumstances.
Yeah.
And I know you guys want to see him in jail, but this is the decision I'm making. But on the flip side of that as well, this is the reason why people in the jury cannot be related or have anything to do family-wise or anything with the victims, because there's obviously going to be a bias there, you know, or like a greater motive behind getting that person in jail, you know. So like the people who are involved or the victims of the crime are often not the best people to pass just judgment on the crime, because obviously they're more likely going to want to just have that person be punished in the greatest way possible.
Yeah, I think that is the injustice part, right? Or revenge part, because you have, obviously we've seen cases where the people normally they're like really religious and they're like, you know what, rehabilitating them is way more important than me seeing them rot in prison. But I don't think most people can do that.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I don't think that's a bad thing. Yeah, I don't think necessarily that's a bad thing. It's cool when someone can look at the bigger picture and not just the pain that they're going through.
Yeah.
It's a tall order to ask everyone to think like that, though.
True, yeah. Yeah, it's true.
And I guess from their perception, revenge isn't in their like repertoire. It is, I don't even know, justice is. If they're like, well, God's going to deal with them, or karma, if they believe in that sort of thing, I don't think they have revenge or justice in mind. I assume, because again, it's coming from another agent. I don't know if karma would be an agent. That would just be
Karma.
law, isn't it? Yeah, karma. I think that's more of a balance of the universe. But with a god, that would be like, oh yeah, I don't need the judge to judge. God will judge them. So yeah, I think they would not see revenge or justice, but everyone around them might do.
You mean the victims?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I guess that would make it subjective then. If you
Wait, which part?
The justice injustice bit. If someone can have neither, I guess it would make the concept of it subjective. If someone broke into my car and stole it, and I don't know, I didn't really want it, or I was going to buy a new one anyway, it wasn't worth anything, and it was going to court, and they were like, oh, he's getting 10 years, I'll be like, don't worry about it, it's not that deep.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for justice or revenge in that point.
Right.
I don't think. So
Yeah, no,
it's
definitely.
not objective. I guess. Yeah, I guess it's subjective then.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I guess there's elements of subjectivity to it for sure, but also elements of objectivity. I think it's one of those things where, because a large component of the stuff involved are humans with ever-changing and different feelings and different thresholds behind what is unjust or unfair or too much or too little. So it's always going to be part of the equation, you know. But so long as there's humans in the like as judges or in the court, in the jury, the defense attorney, prosecutors, this is always going to be a thing. It's like a forever debate, I think.
Yeah, and I think most people would want humans there. I think the knee-jerk reaction of a flat machine giving out the rules.
Oh yeah, no way.
Yeah, people aren't going to vibe with that whatsoever. I think it's going to sound bad, but I think smarter people would. But but normal people wouldn't.
You think there's no way you believe that smarter people would? Sorry, wait. What I should say is there's no way you believe that if you would, then chances are you're a smarter person. Because you would be hyper shoehorning what it means to be smart in that definition. Like, it sounds like what you mean is that you're basically saying that they would be just more logical. No, I don't even know if saying that they would just be more logical is also correct. But I think there is some word in relation to whether it's logic or like a particular kind of thinking, like a pragmatic, or I don't know, maybe there's some other word. I think there is some kind of, there is an adjective you could use to say perhaps X people would prefer the robot system, right? But to deem them as smarter is too the word smarter can encompass a lot more than how you would be describing it if you were to use it in that way.
No, you're right. That's fair. That pragmatic was the word I was looking for, not smart.
Right.
It was pragmatic. Okay. I was thinking, if I say smarter, then I'm obviously just trying to blow smoke on my own ass.
Yeah.